everybody. Welcome to the Right Fit Influencer Podcast, episode 6. My name is Maz Compton. I am your host. Today I am joined on the rectangular table, not a round table, by two guests who are going to introduce themselves in a brief moment. Today we're talking about how the influencer has changed the way the advertising industry works. There's so much to unpack. So without further ado, Jess, would you like to tell everyone who you are, what you do, and why you are here?
Okay, sure. I'm Jessica Prince-Montague. I'm Deputy Editor of Stella magazine. My background is that I have worked 12 years in print media. I started my career at ACP, which is obviously now Bauer, in monthly mags, then did a bit of freelance, ended up at Marie Claire at Pacific, and then decided 2 years ago that the lead times of monthly magazines were too hard for me too hard to handle, so I switched to a weekly format, and I've been at News Corp ever since. First at Sunday Style, and now as deputy at Stella, which rebranded the end of August last year.
And you have some thoughts, I suppose, on the advertising part of this whole podcast. Absolutely, even though you're in editorial.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen the landscape change immensely.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the landscape has shifted like so much just in the time when I started. It was the the end of the ACP heyday years. So I sort of saw the tail end of that, and how, it wouldn't be, the company taking advertisers out. It would be advertisers taking the company out because, everything was so flush. And the landscape has just changed so much. We've had to adapt a lot, and especially, with the rise of digital and social media, it's changed completely. It's, a lot of people say that print is dead, which I don't agree with.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
We might get into that a little bit later.
We can get into that a little bit later, but it's, everyone's had to adapt a lot, and it's, it's an exciting time as well. It's not all doom and gloom.
Absolutely agree. We also have Nima sitting in today. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. Can you give everyone a bit of a heads up, bit of a bio?
It's nothing like yours.
Bit of an audible bio?
That was amazing. My life is not as interesting as Jess's. I work agency side.
Which is literally next door to where we are. So Nima had the least amount of distance to travel to get here today.
Yeah, but made the most effort.
Yes, you did.
That's what matters. So agency side, digital agency side, worked across London, New York, back into Australia, ran an agency, sold that agency, did a .com business, went .bomb. So I had a failure, even though I lived in digital. So I've been in the digital industry from the beginning when we were building websites on CD-ROMs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then we were telling everyone that print is dead.
That's hilarious.
Awkward. And then we went, and then from there, where was I? So yeah, we went building websites, and then built an agency, sold that, did .com, .bomb, went to London, ran a very large ad agency's digital offering, built that out through Europe, then went to North America.
Oh, wow.
Worked on a whole bunch of brands, and then came home, met a really lovely young lady, got married, started a business, and now I'm doing a podcast.
Yeah, you are.
Career highlight.
That is an extensive list. Can I ask you quickly... What, guys, it's not a competition.
Yes, it is. Yes. It's print versus digital.
With the .bomb, I love that terminology. I've never heard it before. What was the biggest lesson you learnt about having a fail? Because I know a lot of people listening will really appreciate the advice of someone who set something up, didn't go to plan, had to kind of start all over again. Sometimes it happens with people's careers. When they're trying to get in, to the world of influencing or as an influencer or into the world of editorial, what have you. I feel like people really benefit from that.
Arrogance is the death knell on any entrepreneur.
Wow.
So I thought I knew it all. I was young, I was arrogant, and I made very, very silly mistakes. And luckily some of it was my money, but there was a lot of other people's money involved. And we were too early to market.
Yep.
And I was arrogant enough to think that I was Steve Jobs. And I learned a very painful lesson. I didn't listen. I did what I thought was right. And I didn't listen. And I learned a Very expensive mistake.
I've done this in every episode that we have had of the Right Fit podcast because we've had so many different varied backgrounds and people and experiences and opinions sit at this table. So I want to ask you both, how would you define an influencer if you can define it? Because I still feel like we haven't nailed down the definition.
Oh, can you go first?
I'll kick it off with Nina.
Just threw me under the bus. No, go ahead. You can go.
I can go. Okay. A person or group with the capacity to persuade or influence a mass of people. I mean, that's what it is at the very crux.
It is. It 100% is. Nima, I'd love your thoughts on what you think, how you think you could define an influencer in 2017.
An influencer in 2017. Okay. Anyone who has a more interesting life than you.
But isn't
good.
that everybody according to Instagram?
Can we say appear to have a more interesting life?
Yeah, we absolutely can.
Well, the thing I don't understand is Michael Jordan was an influencer, right?
This is what I was going to
O'Neal
say.
was an influencer. Muhammad Ali was an influencer. Martin Luther King was an influencer.
And that's why I asked you in 2017, because I feel there's always been organic, influential figures in our society, in pop culture, in history. And now that we're just in this digital age, it's redefining it, but they still exist. I think anyone can be now.
Is it I mean, look, it goes back to what you said about the internet. It's not redefining. It's just in those days you had to be so influential that traditional media would spread your word. Whereas today, technology allows you to spread your own word. So it's not so much the individual as it is the broadcasting mechanisms have changed, which means any person with zero talent, which is my biggest problem with most influencers.
Oh, great.
I agree.
I already love this podcast.
With zero talent is able to influence a bunch of really young, and I'm going to point out women who think they're not good enough or they're not hot enough or they're not smart enough. And why these kids listen is I really want to swear.
We're going to get on quite well.
Beyond me.
This is really great. This is the stuff we want to talk about.
I really hate to say it. I don't think there is such a thing as an influencer. I think there are people peddling garbage. And those people, unfortunately, have mediums that are not selective. Like, you are selective in what you publish in the world.
We are very selective.
Right.
Yes, you are.
That's the problem. Instagram and Facebook are not. And so they allow the quantity of garbage to overrule the quantity of quality. So there is no such thing as influencer in 2017. It's just a bunch of people who have found a mechanism to peddle rubbish and influence young people, especially girls, to do very unhealthy, stupid things.
Do either of you have an example that may spring to mind of an influencer, and I'm doing the air quotes, who actually does the opposite of what we've just heard from you, Nima, who does it well, who that perhaps actually stands for something, who maybe preaches integrity, who is all about authenticity without being, a jerk about, you've just got to embrace your authentic self. Like, I hear that all the time, but then then it doesn't correlate with the actual person and what they're churning out on their channels.
Yeah. I mean, I immediately think of someone like Lena Dunham. Who
great example,
and sort of similar feminist examples like that. I follow her on Instagram, I follow her on Twitter, and I've listened to her podcast as well. And I think she's very aware of what her brand is, but it is intrinsically authentic. I don't even think that makes sense, but it is.
I know what you're saying. She stays in a lane.
Yeah, she stays in a lane. What she's peddling is 100% what she's about.
Yeah.
The only other example I would say would probably be, I can't think of someone off the top of my head, but maybe a sports person. In terms of influencers, I really like people who, are doing good work in some sort of field and then have a lot of influence via their social channels rather than someone who is just trying to get free stuff and peddle stuff to the masses.
Insta famous.
Yeah. And I know I'm a huge supporter of women in sport, and I get really angry when I see influencers using air quotes, being chosen by sports brands to market to young women.
Who aren't sports people.
Yeah, who aren't sports people. And that makes me quite angry.
Yeah,
and
I hear you.
so I think there's quite a few. There's some great female athletes out there as well who
deserve a bit. I guess I don't want to say the spotlight, but you deserve I guess the sharing of the offering of brand representation and this is what I do for a living. Yeah. So let me represent your brand rather than, hey, I look good in a bikini and that's all I do on Instagram and I'll represent your brand.
And they're also mainly tied to sort of positive body image messaging as well.
That's, your health and wellness, not just, hey, I look good.
Yeah, exactly.
Nima, do you follow anybody on Instagram or social media who you think is doing it well? You're shaking your head.
I honestly don't.
I really appreciate your honesty.
I hate to say it. I just don't. I don't feel like there's anyone who's saying anything that, whatever you said, that authentic bit. I don't know anyone.
Well, I see it all. I see a lot of quotes. Hashtag inspo Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I see a lot of quotes about just be yourself. Everybody else has taken it, and there is this. I don't know if we can blame Brené Brown or Sheryl Sandberg for this. Like the popularity of authenticity and being your true authentic self and living to your core. I love that philosophy and I genuinely believe in it. But doing knowing something and believing in something, but then splattering whatever you want on Instagram, it doesn't have to necessarily add up or match up, and there's nobody accountable for it either. So you know what I mean? My online life can be so completely vastly different to my actual real life, and there's nobody there to pull you up on that, which is an interesting thing. Nima, what you said about the brands. So, and I feel like you've had a lot of experience with brand just from what you explained, and I think just you're sort of you're seeing. I'm sure you've overseen it. Have you put a brand and an influencer together?
No. So I work for a magazine that comes in the Sunday paper, but I'm also a glossy, and we don't work with influencers because our reach is the highest in the country and we're entirely a print product. My experience with influencers is more brands coming to me, trying to pitch exclusives and trying to get coverage for influencers in the magazine as well.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, so that's my experience with it. I've done a few things with influencers if the brand has been right and the concept has been right.
Yeah.
But 99% of the time it's not right for our magazine. We're a news-driven weekly.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't understand that.
So would you say that you go to experts more than influencers?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We would never go to an influencer for a quote, for example. It's, we have the best journalists in the country working for our magazine. And
what if it was a story about influencers, though?
No, I'd go to an academic.
That's like
I really
influencer
would.
Inception right there. It's like, whoa, too confusing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've never worked with an influencer on a story per se. It's mainly more that they get pitched to me.
So Nima, sorry, back to you. I know I'm switching between the two of you, but it's good to define where you guys fit into working with influencers. Have you put a brand campaign together with an influencer/influencers?
Usually a client will pick the influencer.
Yeah. And do you have any...
I'd say yes.
I was going to say, do you have any influence over that? As in, could you steer your client in one way and go, hey, maybe do a little bit more research on this person, not necessarily... I don't know if their brand values that they're putting out there really correlate with yours. You don't care?
No, it's not that I won't get involved in it. Like parts of my team will.
Yeah, sure.
But ideally, and I hate saying it, but it's just who's got the most. It's advertising. It's reach and frequency.
It is.
Full stop.
So you think it's just a numbers game? We're down to just a numbers game now?
Well, if you were Martin Luther King, as we said, and you're an influencer, you're trying to change social consciousness. Whereas if you look good in a bikini, then I'm not really sure what you're influencing beyond hold my product, look good next to it.
Yeah.
So and I actually, the biggest problem with influencers I see on Instagram, they just procrastinate the same issue that the magazine industry has been shot for, which is it's unrealistic to look the way you do. And I hate to say it, it sells product. I hate the fact that it sells product, but it sells product.
What would you like to see the social media landscape represent?
I think what it represents is fine. I just think I would love that there was a little bit more education around it's not real.
Yeah.
You ever seen that thing that went around the guy who broke up with his girlfriend and then it shows the real side, but you see his Facebook profile and then the video changes over and you see him drinking and he's like, out with the boys on Friday, and he's drinking scotch. And then it pans out and he's actually in a car under a bridge on his own crying, drinking the scotch.
Oh, wow.
And it shows the real life of this real life and this social life. And if there's just a bit of balance of that, I think that's what I would like to see.
Yeah. Cool.
But there's not really any way to police that or to moderate that.
Not
it's
at
more
the
just
moment.
about education, right?
Well, I mean, we've pulled up, Dove pulled up the magazine industry on the fact
body
that
image.
Body image. Mm-hmm. And they, that really strong campaign that they ran where they actually showed the lady being photoshopped. It just needs those kinds of brands to stand up and actually create social awareness because that's their influencers. Like Dove as a movement is an influencer.
It is.
So it needs those kinds of brands to actually stand up rather than fall in the trap of it's just another advertising medium which is based on reach and frequency.
Yeah, and so with the advertising landscape, how much has it changed? And I'm not really schooled on the advertising world. I kind of come at it from a really different angle, but I could talk about radio broadcast and how so many brands were infiltrated into sentences that I would say as part of a sales campaign. And I really don't necessarily go and eat at this place, but they sponsored the show and gave the company a whole bunch of money, so we have to say it. And I think it could have even gotten down to, I think at one point where the time call was almost sponsored by a brand. Like that's how much you can break down radio and sell it. Mm-hmm. With the advertising landscape across your individual areas, how much has it changed? I'm gonna say in the last 18 months, because I feel like 18 months has been a really big surge in the buzzword influencer and the birth of this industry now that cannot be policed really, and that we're all still scratching our heads at defining.
Well, obviously in print media it's changed significantly. It's no secret that it is a really tough environment out there for print advertising. I've even seen that, in the PR world and the marketing world when I'm just catching up with people and we're talking about campaigns and rollout and that sort of thing. So, obviously I feel like for brands there was this moment where, there obviously were results and, some brands knew they were onto a good thing in terms of...
that was a chair being moved back on a wooden floor.
No, it wasn't.
Just because it's the beauty of podcast. Have to explain all of the noises.
That's okay. I think there's definitely been this movement of brands jumping on board with influencers and turning some attention away from traditional print media. But I also think that there have been many brands who've seen what other brands are doing, not judging if that is right for their, specific, company or brand and just jumping on board and being like, hey, this person's got 1 million followers, let's do a campaign with them.
Yeah.
And I think that really became clear to me about 18 months ago when, like I said, brands come to me pitching influencers, and Sunday Style was a completely different magazine to Stella. As I've said before, Stella's completely news-driven, whereas Sunday Style did touch more on social trends and things like that. And there was this time period where every 2 weeks I would get a call from a brand saying, I've got this amazing exclusive for you. We've done a campaign with this person. We want to offer her to you exclusively. And it got to the point where I was telling brands, I'm really sorry, I get pitched her every 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And
can I guess who it was? No, I'm joking.
we can talk later. I'm not going to name and shame, but it got to the point where it was actually embarrassing for them. And it's like, I know you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars and your campaign is no different to another retail brand who pitched me this exact same thing 2 weeks ago.
So, question on that: do you think that was the influencer pitching their idea and shopping it around to different brands, or do you?
No. I think it was more just brands not being original and and people saying, "Oh, it worked for them. Let's try it on us, with us and see how that works for us." And
it didn't work for you.
Well, not from and that's the one thing I sort of want to say, like, not from a publicity point of view. Especially in Australia, there's quite a core group of influencers the brands go to, and the pool's not big.
Yeah.
And I just question sort of the benefit and sort of how that translates in terms of sales. That's what everyone's trying to achieve.
Are you going to buy the sparkling water? I would love you to.
There's a big bit that you're missing. So go back when the Michael Jordans of the world. So brands, when you build a brand, you build its mission in life, its purpose, its tone, personality, and so forth, right? And you can use techniques like brand archetypes, and you figure out who your brand is. So Nike, I don't know if you know, is the Greek goddess of victory. Right? So, and Nike as a mission statement celebrates the participation, the heroism of participation. So it's not about being an athlete, but it's just about getting out there and doing it. Just do it, being the tagline, right? Nike then, go forward to about late 80s, would then look for people that embodied that feeling of just do it, e.g. Michael Jordan, who became the embodiment of someone who brought to life the mission and the values of that organization and represented them.
Yeah.
He was then used in advertising and so forth. But he was represented the brand because of his skills.
Because of what he did. Right. He didn't change
talent.
that.
Yeah, his talent. He embodied and brought it to life. So,
yes.
Brands try to... The reason when we create brands, we make brands to be like humans. And if you look at one technique being archetypes, if you know about archetype, was created in the 50s by a guy called Carl Jung. And he said human beings fall into 12 major archetypes, right? So, for example, the caregiver, Mother Teresa, you'd expect her to look after others, right? Or the maverick, being virgin, you expect them index finger to the world, I'm going to do things my way, right? So socially, we've all accepted these different archetypes that exist. And so therefore, if I say bikey, we'd all pretty much be about 10% difference, about the same description. Right? So brands try to be like human beings, and so DDB, being an agency, in the 60s said, what if we take these and we impose it on brands? And because people like people, if there's a brand that's like that person, they're going to connect and so forth, right?
Right.
So you travel forward to Mike Jordan, that person then brings that to life, personifies as a human being, which then gives further connectivity. And then travel forward into when the internet started, that people started to listen to people. Because they trust each other. They don't trust the brand to be honest, right? So you had this period where you had these influencers. They were known for their capabilities and skills. Then the internet came about, and so they stopped listening to these people and they started listening to each other. Then come forward to where we are today, where you have a bunch of people who are influential. They're not influencers. They're influential. They don't do anything. And this is the problem. Brands are confused because they can't get these people to embody their brand, to bring it to life. So they try to connect themselves to very basic metrics, which is reach and frequency. Which is what TV is used on, radio and print and the rest of it. So the trouble is they're using old mechanisms, e.g. your Michael Jordans, on very new mediums, which still haven't figured itself out. And they're using old mechanisms of bring my brand to life, show my brand, use my brand, bring it to life, and they're losing the fact that these people aren't contributing anything. And that's the problem, is these brands are using old mechanisms to redo what they used to do as influencers.
Do you think that has devalued advertising as an industry, as a whole?
The thing is, advertising, the definition of advertising is changing. So people don't listen to advertisers. They don't believe an advertiser. And so they listen to each other. And that's why social media is so powerful, is because two people are having a virtual communication, whether that be visual or whatever it might be. But the fact of the matter is advertisers still don't know how to work with this medium. And so what they try to do is they try to buy their way in through individuals that have some form of popularity. The key problem is a lot of these individuals don't hold the same brand values as the products that they're holding or using or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So,
and do you think that brands do what Nike did back in the day when Nike was created?
There's organizations that start with purpose. So if you look at Nudie, right, they started with purpose.
Yep.
There's a gap in the market. There's no real fruit drinks without like heaps of sugar. And I want to do something that gives people that choice. So there's brands that start with purpose, and those brands that start with purpose genuinely, when they create a brand, and this is the thing, a brand is nothing more than if you die. My favorite question is whenever I talk to someone about it, if you die, who will miss you? And if they say no one, then you have no purpose. There's no reason for you to exist. You're just there to make money, right? So the organizations who got powerful brands are usually the ones that start with a purpose, and that purpose then just embodies into a brand, right? Then there's organizations who, and this is where I said to you, there's a difference between a technician and an entrepreneur, because really great products are built by technicians that just don't know how to build a business.
Right.
Right? And I'm a good example of that.
Okay.
Really, really good at what they do, but they're really, really bad at building a business, right?
Yeah.
And so those brands never see the light of day. When you say, like, there's a difference between a brand and a product. Nike has thousands of running shoes and designer shoes, but there's a central brand, right? Then there's the smaller companies you talk. They don't. Most companies that are small, they just generally don't understand brand and what it actually means and the power of a brand. And if you say it, the number of times someone says to me, "Oh, we're not Nike. We don't have that kind of money." And you're like, "Yeah, but Nike started from nowhere."
Yeah, Nike didn't start with money.
Qantas was a country airline.
Yeah,
it is now Australia's largest airline.
Yeah,
it all begins somewhere. So looping back around.
We circle back a lot on these chats. Right. It's okay.
Going back to it, I think there is the idea of building a brand and influencers are at loggerheads with each other, because there is this desire to connect with consumers through a medium that is being governed, that is consumer driven, people telling people.
Yep.
And then there's organizations who cannot reinvent themselves because they are stuck in structures that don't allow. You know, Coca-Cola, for its inventiveness, has a very formulaic process to its advertising, and it's very simple. For every $1 Coke spent, 70 cents is spent on stuff they've always done. They will not leave it. Then you have 20%, which is something that's happened in the Coke family, so Fanta or one of the other brands, that Coke's not doing, so they'll do that. Then 10% is innovation. How do you redefine yourself for a whole new industry when the only amount you're going to spend is 10 cents?
Yeah, wow.
In every dollar. It's impossible.
Yeah.
Then you get these moments where you put your name on a Coke and they have a spike.
Yep.
Because that's cool. Connects. Well, see, that's influential, right?
Yep.
You get your name on your Coke, everyone shared it.
That was new.
Yeah, but then it stopped. It is what it is, and so all it does is blip. So that's why these people connect to these individuals, because at least they're consistently shallow or good looking or whatever you call these influencers. So the trouble is you can't get a brand and an influencer to truly actually connect the way they used to. You know, the relationship with Tiger Woods, the relationship with your Michael Jordans, they were long-term relationships because they embodied the brand. They brought it to life.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen anymore.
Those top-level celebrities and sports people are definitely still around, like your Katy Perrys, etc. Like they still, but I even feel, and maybe this is just because I'm getting older, that it feels like there's less and less super pop stars and super sports people in the world. In the world that we see over and over again, and I don't know if it's diluted because there's a million options of music and program and Netflix and internet and YouTube, and it's so vast and insane. Or if it's just because of YouTube in general. Because if you look at a Jenna Marbles who's got like 17 million YouTube subscribers, most people haven't heard of her. Yet she has 17 million people subscribing to her YouTube channel. So there's like all these different arms, and I feel like that kind of dilutes everything. Is that a fair snapshot of the landscape?
I think so. Like I cast my mind back to the late 80s and early 90s, and it was the Jordan, and like the superstars were like Michael Jackson, and there were sort of only a handful of those really big global superstars. And for the record, I didn't know the YouTuber who you just mentioned.
I know you. I don't think you did either, Nima. But that was my point. And to be 100% honest, I only know her because I interviewed her on a radio show. I hadn't heard of her before, but I had a really amazing experience with a whole bunch of YouTubers at a YouTube fan fest where tens of thousands of kids rocked up to this event.
Yeah.
And I interviewed all these people on stage who I had never heard of really. And these kids were like fanatical, like One Direction fanatical about this almost like breed of content creators now. And so they are influential, I suppose, in their own right, because they are churning out whatever videos they're churning out to the people that subscribe and love it. And
I was just going to jump in before and talk about sort of the control with influencers. That's sort of with brands who are working with them. Just sort of some anecdotal feedback I've been getting over the last few months from contacts within the media industry and mainly PRs is that I think a lot of people are turning away from them. That's the feedback I'm getting in terms of they're having issues with a measure of success with campaigns. There's been some sloppiness. Like someone was telling me this story of a brand that they, as part of their agency, and paid an influencer, and they basically peddled the opposition's message in a post. Like, how is that
intentionally, or just because they didn't think about it?
Just because they were not professional enough and had no idea what they were doing. So there's definitely some pushback I've been hearing. So I think it will be interesting to see where it goes from here.
I don't know where it's going,
yeah,
and that's
exactly.
what's really interesting. And I loved the point that you made, Nima, that like there were these pillars, in the late 80s and in the 90s, and I think the birth of the internet kind of wrecked everything with pop-up ads and influencers. It has to go somewhere. So I don't think it's just going to implode and the industry is going to stop existing and people are going to just unfollow everyone on Instagram. Or maybe we are going to get off the grid and all go and live on sustainable farms. I don't know. But I feel like we're in the thick of where it's heading, and I really don't know in which direction that's going to be.
I'll tell you, I don't think it's good. So, have you guys seen that Pepsi ad that got pulled?
The Kendall
Jenner one?
Yeah. The sports bet one. I think
I haven't seen the sports bet one.
Yeah, they used the guy who got done for steroids, and
it's awesome.
And they say everybody needs an inside help. Anyway,
wow.
But like what you're seeing happening now is advertising as a medium it's not going to die. It just has to change, right?
Yeah.
And you see advertisers doing really unreal stuff to get attention. So like, if you ask me, I think Pepsi did the best thing to come up with the worst ad possible because it got more talk online than airtime they could have afforded.
I often wondered because I think people in my circle at least, when the ad came out, the talk was how did this ever get after all of the levels of approval that a campaign that big globally has to go through and the spend on it, how? And then I'm like, maybe that was the whole point. And maybe there's a genius there going, let's make the worst thing ever, because at least it'll trend for a day.
And in my second example that I gave you of that brand, they even knew it internally. Around the boardroom table, they knew it's going to get pulled. It was just a matter of how long they could prolong it. They say the precipice of real change is at your point of complete destruction. We are really getting to that point where advertisers are desperate to get attention, so they create the worst possible ad to then get talk and discussion on chat through influencers and so forth, right? So we are definitely at a point. So where it's going to go is, I think advertisers are going to change and they're going to focus on product. If you look at what's about to happen is bought media as a medium is getting so expensive, except for traditional medias, I guess. But like you look at your Googles of the world, your Facebooks of the world, they are so rich. They know there's a change coming. And this is an important point. I'll come back. I promise I'll come back to influencers, right?
No, this is great. This is really interesting.
If you look at advertising dollars, more and more money over the next 10 years is going to move into what's known as owned media, assets that I own as a brand, right?
Okay.
Jetstar, for example, has realised that they don't need to acquire new customers. People know them. They just have to do better at understanding what they want, email marketing the right way, and when someone comes to the website, serving the right content, and so forth, right? So they know that and like Telstra has 25 million page views a month. That's more people than Australia nearly, right? So in a way, they've realized they don't need to acquire customers. So what's going to happen is advertisers are going to move away from acquisition marketing, or the big guys are going to move away from acquisition, more to retention marketing. So they're going to invest in building better relationships with their current customers. And if you look at ads like Telstra, Vodafone, it's all about you and you as my customer. So it's going to flip. As soon as that flip occurs, this desire to find new customers or get influenced to talk about my new product is going away. And it's all going to go back into, I'm going to have a better relationship. So what will happen is advertising will no longer exist. Your product will become your advertising. The quality of your service, the quality of your product, and then people will naturally want to talk. So it's naturally going to go. And you look at Generation Z, they are the least engaged socially. They are more inclined to actually come back together in groups and connect in the real way rather than their millennial brothers and sisters. So the world's flipping and it's changing.
Yeah.
And so advertisers are going to change. So where's it going to go? I think it's going to move away from that traditional advertising where we, pray and spray, spray and pray, the other way, to people really building better product, which connects better, which means they don't need individuals who have no talent communicating their brand and their experience.
So I want to wrap it up by asking you guys, and I'm asking you this final question because I know a lot of influencers listen to this podcast and they would be sitting there maybe being a little bit nervous because you guys have brought up some really insightful stuff that we haven't really explored, because this podcast, I want to say, has been pro-influencer until this episode. And I think it's really important to have the conversation that we've had today. What is going to happen to the influencer when when we get to that tipping point and it shifts over into the new mediums or the new? What do you guys think will happen to the wannabe influencer, the Insta famous person, the person who right now has 100,000 followers, makes a part-time living out of doing their Instagram? They get contra, they get sent stuff, they post it on their Insta, their followers go up, all the rest of it. What happens to that person in a couple of years when it potentially shifts?
Centrelink.
I think
Centrelink will always be there.
I think they'll just gradually get weeded out, and I think that's the, we touched on this before, but in terms of other people having influencers having other professions,
yes,
and having a diverse career, not throwing all their eggs in one basket, just on Instagram. I think, you have to be really smart about it, because if you're a one-trick pony and all you can do is a few Instagram posts, then I do not see longevity there.
Yeah, I was going to say that's basically not a long-term. It doesn't feel like a long-term play.
No, absolutely.
Yeah,
not from my perspective. But there are other people out there who, have a lot of other things going on and building businesses on the side, and they're the ones who are going to survive, and they're the ones who I think are a lot more, authentic and. They're just being a bit smarter about it.
Nima and Jess, thank you so much for your time. I have honestly really, really enjoyed chatting to you guys.
Likewise.
It's been really insightful and sort of depressing.
Thank you for having us.
If you need any more World War tips, just call Jess.
Can we follow you on Instagram? Guys, thanks for listening to the Right Fit podcast. We love having you along. Make sure you subscribe, rate and review on iTunes, and you can listen on SoundCloud as well. We'd love to grab a review from you guys so we can keep doing it, because we're thoroughly enjoying it. So take care. See you next time.